Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ask Adam Live. Ask is the acronym for Always Seek a Knowledge. One thing in this episode and others that you've listened to, I always strive that you just learn about life, learn about yourself, ask, ask more questions, be more inquisitive to finding out more about yourself and about the world around you. Maybe even find out about others around you. Not only do I feel this is helpful because it allows us to, well, understand that A, we're not alone, B, we are here to help each other, and C, well, that we just understand life in general and more about ourselves. That is the purpose of this episode and others that I publish is that you ask, that you always seek knowledge. Now let's get on with the show. Today's episode, Lead Light and Win Heavy, the secret to sustainable leadership. Well, I'm coming to you from a remote location because I'm traveling a little bit, and I promised I would never phone this in. I would always give to you my authentic self, I would give to you an authentic show, and I would do my best to always leave you asking. Some leaders burn out carrying it all. Great leaders win by learning to lead light. Leadership isn't about weight. It's about clarity, energy, and sustained impact. I remember a time that, well, I guess the best term is I overled. I was taking on too much, not to mention the weight of the business, but I was also carrying some emotional weight. And I was trying to wear every hat. You might even say I was trying to wear every hat in a windstorm because none of them were staying on. Things just weren't effectively happening the way I expected, and I certainly was not seeing the results I dreamed I should get. I learned at that moment I should lean light and get powerful results. I'll share with you that, well, about a year and a half into the real estate industry, and this was in early 2000s, that I got this idea of opening my own shop. It seemed pretty, well, I don't want to say the term easy, seemed doable. When I looked at the owner, broker, and manager that I was initially working under, and just kind of watching how they casually went through life and casually just did business and just everything seemed to really be going well. And for them, I know it wasn't. I found out later it wasn't. But I thought, you know what? I don't have those problems. So why can't I do this? And I did. I partnered with two other agents that were eagerly looking to be on their own as well. We started up, the three of us, with a firm and had six agents that were working under us, as well as an administrative assistant. Had our own establishment, had a sign. We were there. We were publishing in the local paper. I know this is sounding antiquated. We got into some social media activity. I mean, we were really starting to build the foundation of something great, and it was great. However, I was trying to do a lot of things. I was trying to be an owner. I was trying to be the broker. I was trying to be just the general salesperson, still being able to do a few transactions here and there. Not to mention, I was also going through a pretty interesting time in my relationship. And then the financial issue of 2008 occurred. There was a lot going on. And quite frankly, I was overloaded. And when the first opportunity came, I hesitate and laugh to share this with you, but it's true. So I can't be dishonest. Is I took the first opportunity of a life raft that was going to get me out instead of fighting just a little bit harder, swimming a little bit longer, and really quantifying the endurance that it was going to take to win the day in that particular situation. So, yeah, we can be as strong as we say we are, but when it really comes down to it, and I will say I didn't know as much then as I do now, because if I knew what I knew now, then I certainly would have swam longer. I would have endured it a little bit more. I would have taken the risk that needed to be taken. And I kind of took the easy way out. And a lot of this, again, was because I was overloaded with the emotional weight, with the financial weight, with the day to day business decision weight that just resonated daily in this particular business. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that it's a great thing to do, and I'm not going to say that it's easy. I am sharing with you today that, well, having a little bit of understanding, asking the right questions, and just knowing how much more you have left in the tank, well, it can certainly change how you make decisions, what you do with your life, and how, well, quite frankly, it's going to affect others, not only your own. I promise you in this episode, you'll learn how to release what's not yours, lead from alignment, and build teams that help you win without the weight. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, not going to be a piece of cake. And you're certainly not going to be able to sprint with no weight on your shoulders. There's still going to be a backpack. But let's just say a backpack full of feathers and a backpack full of bricks, certainly two different things. You still get the backpack. That's kind of part of being a business person, entrepreneur. Part one, what it means to lead heavy. Signs that you're leading heavy. Let's dive into these. Are you constantly exhausted, maybe even irritated by the simplest things, or maybe even the most complex, and you try to make excuses for those? How about overfunctioning for underperformers? You know, many times it was the struggle to keep the business going that I found that, oh, if somebody wasn't able to do it, I had to be the one to do it, was really what was always resonating in my mind. I remember a specific event where I think we needed an IT person to reset something. And I was like, we can't have another bill. I got to figure this out. So I went online and I learned about IT work. And I was like, oh, reset the router, do this, do that. It was stressful. And I probably cost myself a transaction or two by not being fully present in doing what, well, frankly, what I was supposed to do, like maybe planning the next office meeting. I eventually did, but it was like, did I really give it my focus, or was it something I got done to get done because I know it had to happen? So over functioning for your underperformers. Again, finding yourself doing things really outside of your wheelhouse, out of your spectrum, it can become taxing. And it can become frustrating too, because then you realize you spent a lot of time on something you really had no business, well, spending time on. And that can just lead into a whole mental trail through the rainforest of doubt and dismay, and just really kind of crushing, if you will. You also can't unplug mentally when you're off like this. You're always at high alert. You're always striving and doing something. And like I said, I I did things instead of delegate. I should have delegated so much more. And I know I did a certain level of delegating, but it was also just the stress of I didn't want to have to think about it or do anything with it, which, you know, was kind of willy nilly. Is really just the thing. Uh, when leads would come into the office, when clients, I say leads, when clients looking for a professional would come into the office via email or some kind of inquiry, and we would designate those to specific agents, and that was a designation placed on the calendar. So it was, kind of a little bit of a lottery system, if you will, and most offices have that. I'm not telling any secrets outside of the house. But many times when something would come in, or even for me, and I was just like, oh, I can't do that. I got to do this and this and this. And I didn't. So I gave them that client to someone else that I probably lost clientele because these were my clients coming to look for me. And I was like, I just don't have time. This person will help you. They'll do a great job, And I remember telling myself I was building the business, so I had to let those clients go. And this was the business and the rapport that I was building. I had built this 2 years prior. And now I was just giving it away because I was preoccupied by stress, by the way. So learning how to delegate, certainly going to lighten your load. And I'm not saying that you have to just give everything away, but certainly, like I said, understand what's in your parameters, what's in your wheelhouse, focus on that, and then delegate the rest and be okay with it. And quite frankly, paying, I don't know, $100, $200 for an IT guy to come do the thing would have been worth it when you add up the possible thousands that were lost, not only from passing a client on, for instance, but the follow up that that client would have given to the next client, to the next client that would have eventually been yours, was ultimately lost. And it was given to an agent, but by the same token, let me explain, I guess, in a nutshell, if I can diverge for just a short moment, is in that real estate world, for instance, when you do work with an agent, you kind of become kin. You you relate to that agent and you become part of that agent. And therefore, when you recommend someone, you would recommend that agent you worked with. Well, that being said, and that goes on. So your recommendation turns into another recommendation, turns into another. And that, quite frankly, is how many commission sales continue to grow, is through the referral business. Well, it's a great concept. And I was getting a slice, if you will, of the earned commission coming back to the office, which was benefiting the burden I was carrying with my other two partners of sustaining the business. But like I said, ultimately, the huge loss was when that agent left the office. They kind of took my clientele that, well, I gave them, but it was no longer going to benefit me. It was going to benefit either themselves or another broker that they were working under. So you see how that small delegation could have saved me a lot of heartache and, quite frankly, would have helped sustain the business. So remember that you don't want to overfunction, and you want to, always find yourself center, always have that peace, whether you find it at the gym or through meditation, through yoga, walks in the park, whatever your exercise of mental clarity is, you need to have that. That is certainly one way to lighten your load. Delegation is another way to lighten your load. See, if everything depends on you, you've built a bottleneck, not a business. That's what I had, was quite frankly a bottleneck. Even a funnel with a really clogged up filter. Part two, the 4 practices of light leadership. So let's look at how we can turn the heavy into light. First of all, you need to release the invisible weight. This is the invisible weight of, well, people pleasing. Quite frankly, people pleasing. The pressure to please. First. The other pressure, which is invisible as well, is proving. That you need to prove what it is you're doing, that you are in charge. And the third, and I know some of you perfectionists out there are not going to agree with this, but it's to be perfect. And I was there, man. I wanted that to be the best agency, and it was. But I didn't see it being perfect because I kept seeing its flaws. So, the people pleasing, always trying to please everyone, and understand that you can't please everyone. You can please a few and let that be okay. And you don't have to prove everything just to a few. Remember your fan base, because your fan base will tell other new fans and it grows from there. But if you find yourself trying to prove yourself to people that, well, quite frankly, don't even know you, then you have to do some extra stepping in order to prove yourself to them that don't know you. And perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to have a process. And quite frankly, you'll find that with a process, your load will be much lighter. And if it's not perfect the first time, don't be upset. Remember, you're learning. And the next time it'll be a little better, and the next time even better. But at the end of the day, it's never perfect. Because even if it is perfect in that hypothetical world, you're still going to find some adjustment that needs to be made, and you're going to implement that. I'm almost certain. A journal prompt. What belief makes you think that you need to carry it all? I invite you to write that down today. Get yourself into a quiet space and sit down and say, hey, what makes me think that I got to carry it all? And maybe even make a list of all of these things that you're carrying, all of the burdens that you feel are yours. And I think you'll find that once you get this on a list and leave some room to the right, because now you're going to start writing names of delegation. Maybe it's time to get that property manager. Maybe it's time to get another admin. Maybe it's time to get an accountant. Depending on how and where you want your business to grow, at certain points, you're going to have to make those steps. And it's going to lighten your load. And quite frankly, the lighter your load, the more time you'll find to expand your business and to be, well, quite frankly, a lot more creative. In this process, you're going to segue into part 2, which is clarify what is yours. What is your actual role in the business as a leader? Are you the CEO? Are you the head of finance? Are you a manager of managers? Right? Are you the head muckety muck of it all and you're just overseeing everything because you're a great organizer and leader and pivotor that knows what direction ultimately the business needs to go, and that's what you're out designing and delegating to then instruct those who need to do what they need to do to make that happen. What is your role as a leader? Remember how I said earlier about staying in your wheelhouse? Yeah, stay within the lines. I know as entrepreneurs, we don't like to do that. We want to stretch out a little bit. We want to adventure. But, if you're going to start a business, probably one of the first things you need to do is already consider you're going to need some level of an administrative assistant. Now, is that going to be a part-time person? Is it going to be a strictly online person? Is it going to be someone who caters to your every need, which is, sorting through emails, dictating letters, and doing many of the established communications that need to take place in any business? If that's the case, you need to already make that a line item budget. Remember, you got to delegate. And don't second guess yourself to think, well, I don't need one now. That is when you need one, is when you said you don't need one now. Because quite frankly, you're already in business, because you're already thinking about that business. You also need to draw the line between ownership and over control. Many of us have started a business and have a business, and we say we are owners of the business, but we're just working W-2 style right next to the person that we're paying. We're just paying ourselves a little higher rate and doing it a lot differently with a 1099. But come on now. You're, know where you're at. Know that ownership has its privileges, and understand that you don't need to control. Remember, it's not perfect, and that you need to I'm going to come up with a really big word that most people don't like either, and that's trust. You're going to need to learn to trust people because ownership, quite frankly, has nothing to do with the day to day business. Ownership is owning the business and figuring out strategically how to duplicate that business. If you own a business, if you truly own a business, you're figuring out how to duplicate it. I think of an example like Ray Kroc, for instance. He was an owner. He thought like an owner because he was constantly figuring out how to duplicate something. And that's exactly what he did. He set up the template for how to develop and build McDonald's chains everywhere. He was an owner. Was he flipping burgers? Was he unlocking the door? Was he cleaning the floors? Heck, he was barely pulling into the parking lot of these establishments. He was an owner. He was very far attached. But with his contracts and the way he set it up, where those franchises were basically utilizing his real estate, he had control. So he didn't need to over control. He didn't need to pull in the parking lot of every single establishment that was owned by him. Or I guess I should say that was rented, the franchise that was rented by him, because he owned the real estate. And he had ultimate control. Not over the business, over the property is what he retained. He just sold the franchises. And that was true ownership because he was letting somebody else do the heavy lifting. Now, I think in a certain way he was over controlling to a certain degree, but it was in that documentation form is where he had control. It wasn't hands-on. Like I said, he certainly wasn't coming in to say, here's how to change the menu. He knew that was a template that you don't mess with. He just needed to figure out and to adjust how to get a franchise onto that property that he had already owned. And we could go into the story about his ownership, but I'm just saying is he knew his lane and he knew his ownership. So if you're out there doing the daily and you show up in the office and then you're out in the field and you're not delegating, well, I can tell you you're already getting burned out and you just don't know it. And if that's what you want to do, well, then quite frankly, you're a manager and you need to find someone else who's going to buy up your business because you're a manager. Now, if you want to be in ownership, that's where you need to find a manager to take that field work away from you. You can focus on repeating the business. Now, for instance, say it's lawn care. I know I'm jumping around with businesses, but man, this is all encompassing. Say it's lawn care. If you're out driving the truck in any shape or form, yeah, I get it when you're starting a business, but once you get 2 or 3 trucks, it's time to start honing in on how you've got to that 3 trucks and how to make a 4th truck. Go out and stir up some more business and get a 4th truck. Not that you get to drive it, that you set up, again, the template where now you have a team of people in that 4th truck and a 5th truck. And pretty soon you have a fleet of 50 and 60. And you're going from cutting grass to maybe removing snow or to parking lot maintenance. And now you're getting into sealants and parking line painting, spraying and stuff like that. So it's like, that's what owners are in their solitude, if you will, to think about how do I develop my business to the next level, keeping it sustainable throughout the year and not just a seasonal business. And how do I turn 3 trucks into 30 trucks into 300 trucks? That's what ownership is. See the difference? And they're not showing up at the site every day either just to make sure everybody clocked in and clocked out. That's not ownership either. That's a manager. Ownership is figuring out, where do I put the next establishment? Where are the 4 corners of my metropolitan area that I want to conquer? And how can I make sure that I get, the most effective time? You don't want your crew of maintenance individuals having to circumvent the city to get from one job to another, or to only be able to ensure a client can get their stuff taken care of only on a Monday because that's the quadrant that you manage the city with. No, as you're starting to grow, you're going to have those four different establishments at all four corners of the city so that you can guarantee some level of scheduling that's going to accommodate your client. Because I guarantee that your particular day might be the busiest day for them, and they don't need a yard crew in there with grass clippings and leaf blowers while they're having their busiest day and you're tying up the parking lot. So, see how growth can then turn into some level of expansion for your business. So, again, understand between ownership and trying to over control. And if you want to be a manager, that's great. Find someone to buy your business and pay you off and watch them grow and do exactly as I just mentioned. Or you can be the one doing it and they can be the manager. You decide. It's your business, it's also your life. I want you to delegate with clarity. This is our third step. Light leaders teach, they don't tolerate. You know, what you train and share with someone, what you allow them to, well, offer to you, it's kind of what you're going to get. So if you allow a certain individual to do certain things, well, that's kind of what you're going to get. They're going to give it to you each and every time because you've taught them what you'll tolerate. So be clear and concise with that manager as to what you expect. And even share with them to say, I don't have time. It's not rude. I don't have time to worry about the daily. That's why I have you. I'm an owner, and here's what I expect. So you need to delegate with clarity. Use clear, a clear definition of done, and a clear definition of check-ins. If someone's checking in with you every day, that's a little overbearing. Maybe at the startup time, just to set that cadence, if you will, or precedence is okay. Yes, this is what I like. This is what I like. This is great. Once you get that in play, man, I should only talk to you about every week, maybe even every 2 weeks, just to make sure we're maintaining. And you could almost stretch it out to a month because the days are going to fly and the business is going to move. And if you're spending, I don't know, let's say it's an hour, maybe 2 hours of some level of follow up, that's almost a day's work. We're talking 8 hours a month that you're spent just connecting with your manager or your admin. That's way too much time to be spent. We're talking like an hour a month just to check in and make sure that things are still the status quo, or maybe to check in and understand what's interesting out in the field. Hey, have you seen the latest type of equipment out there? Is that something that could be helpful to the team? Something that could save time? For our clients, is it better to have a high-speed bag mower than this particular device? When it's time to start upgrading equipment, you want to talk to the people in the field and understand what's going to be best beneficial for them, as well as what's unnecessary. And that's going to help you grow your business because you're going to save some money and or you might spend some money. But if that is what saves time and helps promote your professional image, as like I said, we seem to be on this lawn care thing at the moment, that's what you do. And as an owner, it's that kind of insight that you take back to your think tank and say, okay, let me think about this. How does this benefit my business? Is the cost worth it? What's your ROI? By looking at all of these factors without the weight of trying to be a manager and a supervisor and taking care of payroll and people and whatnot, you have a much better ability to work these things out and to make sure that you are making the best decisions for your business. And best decisions, I can assure you, is what creates sustainability as well. So use that clear definition of done and establish some level of check-in that eventually doesn't consume so much of your time. Step number 4 is recharge as responsibility. Your energy is a leadership asset. You need to recognize that. And you need to know that you don't need to spend a lot of time at the shop, right? You don't need to always follow up. You don't need to make sure that if you have to have the people that you trust, you have to ensure they're doing things to your expectations. And the moment that you get something that doesn't ring true with what you've set in place, and I'm talking feedback, maybe a client or customer gives you some feedback about their disappointment in something. The customer is pretty much right. And you need to take that at heart. And you need to go back and understand what it was that they experienced. Maybe you didn't use the collection, the clipping collection device at a particular client, and they were left with a little mess. Or maybe the blower um, team member wasn't, cognizant of what they were doing. They were just kind of getting it done, and it left it kind of messy. And the landscaping looked a little disheveled. And if a client or customer is giving you that, then you need to immediately get with your manager and or to the field to ensure that this isn't happening again and implement some retraining or just reset those expectations. Now, that may be an impromptu meeting that's going to step outside of your hour a month, but it certainly is going to save you thousands when it comes to repeat business and a satisfied customer when it comes to that renewal contract. So you want to be able to nip those things in the bud. And part of that is also having that strong manager. But you got to retain your energy, and that it's your asset. So you can't let sometimes those things bother you. Again, you need to go back to that D word of delegation. Like I mentioned earlier, schedule margin and movement and recovery. These are all non negotiables. When you have a block in your schedule where you're not going in, where you're not following up with business, you're just letting it coast, you got to be okay with that. Know that everything is going to be all right. And when your phone rings and it's somebody with an issue, you it should be a true sign that you need to delegate that to someone else. Maybe it's the office admin that if a truck is out on a job and it's out doing its thing for the day and there's an issue with a flat tire or some engine, that your admin should be able to take that call and schedule some roadside service in order to get that taken care of. It shouldn't be on you to start having to manage that, especially if you're not on that schedule. If you're not into the daily, designate and delegate. I cannot stress that anymore. Also, the movement. It's your responsibility to ensure that there's movement in your business. And that can be positive movement and sometimes negative movement. But you have to make sure that there's some level of movement in your business, as well as recovery. In yourself and your business, you have to be able to recover. And that may be some downtime. That may be a spa day. I know personally in my business, it's a great day to go play some golf. That is how I recharge and unplug. I think of nothing but that stick, that club, and a ball. And that's it. And I get done with that. I have so much more clarity to sit at my desk and start making decisions as an owner. Absolutely. Absolutely. So recovery is a non negotiable. And you always need to be thinking about, again, the movement with your business and where it's going. That too is a non negotiable. You can't just say, oh, I'll put it off for another year because 5, 10, 15 years will go by and you're still sitting around with 4 trucks figuring out why your business hasn't grown. You need some level of movement. I will also say that you need some personal movement. Being still and having some Zen time is great, but you also need to be active and get out and do something yourself, whether that's running, walking, biking, do some level of movement. I remember reading an article, gosh, it's been a while now, but it was back when Google was getting started. And they were always talking about how they would have board meetings out on a walking track. And almost every facility had some level of a walking track or walking path around the building or even in the building that allowed people to walk. I know that scientific studies have proven that when you walk, you actually think better. You think more. And the reason this is well, first of all, because your body's busy doing something else. So it's kind of focused on the energy and the movement and the blood circulation and whatnot. But there's a correlation to left foot, right foot moving in front of the other. That simple walking, and it becomes automatic for your body to begin doing this once you get started. That it's like, okay, left foot, right foot, we're doing this. And then all of a sudden, what kind of oddly happens is that your brain alternates left, right, because it's the whole right side, left side controlling the body. But as you're moving, it's, oh, oh, and the synapse is going left to right. And people have found that they think better, they communicate better just by walking. So if your group business meeting, make it mobile one day and see what comes from it. But you got to be moving. You have to have movement. Part 3. Here it is, winning heavy. Although with lightness. Light doesn't mean less impact. It means more sustainable impact. Not sure which example to go for, but well, let's go back to the landscaping, right? Sustainable impact. What is going to last longer? Having a new crew, having another crew, building another crew? What's going to give you sustainability as well as to lighten your load? That you would actually create gap in you would create a gap in a schedule by actually having another truck that could utilize things. And maybe you start moving zones around and start alternating things. And maybe this crew is more focused in a pretty dense area with a lot of clientele, where this crew is a little bit more expansive on the more suburban side of your city. Again, what is more sustainable? Not less, but more sustainable for your business. I can tell you another way to win heavy is when you release your ego. I know that's going to hit you below the belt, and I'm sorry, but you got to let your ego go. Your name's already on the sign and most likely on the trucks. I'm not sure how much more popularity you feel you need to gain, but let the ego go. And again, it's not about you. You have to think of yourself as, well, a giver. You know, just think of what you're already giving. The fact that you're giving so many people this opportunity as a landscape owner, for example, that they're working, they're moving, they're staying moderately healthy, they're being outside, most likely enjoy what they do, and they bring something home to their family, which is a happy spirit and a little bit of money. So you really don't need an ego. You should just feel good about what it is that you're doing. Another way to win heavy is remove that micromanagement. Again, you should have trust and management in place that allows you to, well, quite frankly, let others manage so that you don't have to. And they don't need to micromanage. They just need to manage and designate and delegate themselves. Over responsibility, man, this is another heavy that, quite frankly, you can get away from, is over responsibility. Remember, stay in your lane. Know what is your responsibility, and then know what can be designated and delegated to someone else to be responsible for. And quite frankly, going back to the ego thing, I found it a lot more fun when I had to wait for somebody to come and tell me about something that I didn't have to be responsible for, and then see how they were going to work it out. Or if they had a specific question for me that I could answer quickly or gain some more information and share that with them. But I actually felt pretty good that, in a way, I wasn't responsible, like kind of throwing it on someone else. I found, well, enlightening, quite frankly. I found it very light that even when something would come up, I remember just Tabby, who was our admin. And I'd say, well, Abby, what do you think? Well, I would do it this way. There you go. And I didn't have to think about it. And I gave them more and more responsibility. So that's one of the ways that you can win heavy is incorporate some lightness. And you'll find that by removing your ego, not thinking that you need to micromanage, and to start, well, designating and delegating responsibility, you unlock scale. This is how you move up. And think about it. You get rid of your ego by entertaining yourself with the idea of putting your name on another truck and a trailer, right? If your business is named after yourself, how cool is that? What do you need an ego for? What do you need an ego for? Just to see your name on another truck? That to me is exciting. That would be enough for me. I wouldn't need an ego. I'd be like, hey, look, I get to put my name on another truck. I'm scaling. Can't wait to put my name on another truck. That's where I would be. Absolutely. And by making these light moves, you're going to create these massive results. As I mentioned before, the responsibility. This was giving someone full ownership. Hey, what would you do? What decision would you make? Okay, that's a good decision. Not sure I would have made it, but it's certainly a different way to look at it. Run with it. See where it goes. You ever notice, and I'm going to bounce around here, but even with sports, man, when you're winning the game, what do? You put your third string players out there and let them participate a little bit, get some court time, field time, if you will, allowing them to get full ownership of the team. That they are a part of something. Are they going to score the winning goal? Well, or the basket, or whatever the sport is. They could. Does it matter? You're already winning the game. You're already multiple points above the competition. But you're giving them ownership. You're giving them the ability to participate. Another thing, and this might hurt a few of you out there too, is you want to win heavy. Here's something, and it's light. Just say no. Sometimes saying no to a project is going to be the best thing you could ever do. Sometimes saying no to a contract that's going to over obligate you, that's going to maybe place you in a position that you're absolutely uncomfortable with at the particular time in your business, say no. It frees things up. And you may find that saying no to that created a bigger yes in the future. Now, I'm not promising anything. I'm just sharing with you that it has that potential. If it's something you actually don't feel in your heart of hearts is something you should be doing with your business as an owner, say no. Like I mentioned earlier, maybe it's simplifying the system. When you're looking at pieces of equipment for this landscaping business, is there something that's better, easier, more compact, maybe faster, can get the job done? I'm not saying hastily. I'm saying a professional piece of high-speed equipment that will get it done and save you 15 minutes. That, quite frankly, if you did 4 jobs saving 15 minutes, you now have an hour to do something else. Maybe that's another client, another customer. See how that time is adding up, kind of replicating itself? Those are the decisions ownership make. And because they are free and not encumbered and not heavy burdened with management and accounting and all the details of something by trying to have an ego and micromanage, that they can allow the creativity of saying no to a project, or the creativity of simplifying the system, but also have the mindset and wherewithal to say no to a project that's not fitting of your business. I invite you to download Lead Light Audit Sheet. Identify 3 heavy behaviors to release and 3 light habits that you can enforce. Tag at Ask Adam Live with the hashtag lead light win heavy and share briefly what you're letting go of. Heavy leaders carry burdens, light leaders carry vision. You're not meant to do it all, you're meant to guide the way. See, leadership isn't about pressure, it's about presence. So be there for your team fully, strong, with the mental capacity to grow by allowing them to carry some of the weight. I will leave you with this. When you lead light, win heavy, because the lighter your grip, the greater your reach. This has been another great episode of Ask Adam Live. Thank you for joining us, and let's go out and make it a great day.